What's going on, y'all? Good morning. This is your boy 3 Stacks in this thing representing Team King of Games. And I'm going to go over an update on the deck I've been playing this entire format. Even like prior to Spiral format, I was tweaking around with this deck. Did a lot of variations with it. It's changed. Even again, since the last update I did, it was undefeated for 3 weeks. This time I ended up going second place on Monday, but I was like not really feeling it that day, and my heart wasn't really in it. And the deck, it was like, I felt like it needed something that day. So I kind of went into the tournament not even feeling fully confident and still got second place with it. And I was really, really happy with the progress. I actually picked up a couple cards that I really needed for it. Just to make it more competitive. The way I wanted to play this deck was kind of to have the highest ceiling that I possibly could in every matchup, to have a huge control aspect, and to have as many answers as possible to everything. So what I like to do is kind of pay attention to the cards in my opponent's hand, and count the numbers and forms of disruption that I have, and then kind of keep track of the cards that he has, and as many cards that I can eliminate out of his hand. It helps me to further progress my game state, and that's kind of how I've been playing this deck lately. I've been trying to just get as many cards out of my opponent's hand as possible before I make my plays. Like dropping a masterpiece when your opponent has 2 cards in hand is just so detrimental. It's insane. But aside from that, man, I'm going to just quit rambling. I'm going to hop right into this main deck. So starting with monsters, I still rock 2 copies of Masterpiece. I really like this guy a lot. He's actually allowed me to play through so many of these quote-unquote like unbreakable boards. He's just so powerful, and he's one of the safest plays to make. He helps you to push through the firewalls. He helps you to push through the Tri-Gate. He helps you to push through the Sleeper. Even in the Pendulum matchup, like if they go for the Purple Poison Joker combo, because if you know that combo and because you have that knowledge, you never let them actually enter battle phase with the Joker on field. Whether you pop it with Masterpiece, whether if you stop their searching, whether you strike the Pendulum Summon, either way. So this card is just really, really powerful. I feel like in every matchup, yeah, he can lose to Kaijus, but that's why it's really smart to play 2 and to manage your resources very well, so that if one gets Kaiju'd, you'll more than likely have the second one in hand and drop that one and leave the Kaiju on field so that you can no longer be Kaiju'd again. He's just so powerful. Aside from your opponent Kaiju, and they just have to play around Diagram first and then try to attack over him, which it costs a lot of resources to do so. That's why I like this card, because even if I lose him, my opponent loses so many cards from their hand just to get rid of him. And like I said in the beginning of the video, the way I play this deck, I'm just trying to get as many cards in their hand as possible. So this guy's insane. I played through so many boards like that. My opponent was so confident that it just couldn't be broken. Just a Masterpiece alone. Every time you summon this card, you're disrupting your opponent. You're clearing cards just by summoning him, using his effect to out another card and just attack over whatever you see fit. He's just a really, really powerful boss monster. And then we play 2 copies of Mariamne, the True Draco Phoenix. She just lets you make Masterpiece however you want it, be it Spell Monster or Trap Monster. You search for him and the Spell or Trap. So I like her a lot. She's actually the only aside from Masterpiece, she's the only Draco monster that I play. I don't play Ignisy or Mariamne or True Draco Cavalry. I don't play any of them. Just to me, they're Garnets. They're very situational. They do nothing by themselves in hand. Like if you have them in a diagram, you still can't do anything, whereas if you have this in a diagram, you can do a lot. In addition to that, you have to play more of the continuous spells and traps for those baby Dracos to be live, because that's how you summon them, and I don't like that, because the continuous spells and traps don't do anything by themselves. What I wanted to do with this deck was play a lot of standalone cards to increase my ceiling and help out in terms of consistency, because I also play so many hand traps that if I have 3 hand traps and like 1 Ignis Heat and like a trap like Solemn Strike, I can't really do anything in terms of field presence. All I can do is like stall, and I don't like that, so that's why I never played the baby Dracos. And to continue with the monster lineup, I actually played 3 copies of Mr. Crowley now. I bumped Alistair to 3 because it actually came up numerous occasions where I either pitched one for the damage step effect to boost my Makaba, and then the second one I had to sacrifice it because it was the only monster in hand to negate, and then my Mekaba got outed. Next turn, I either had a Meltdown or a Terraforming, and I had no follow-up because that was the only card I had in my hand. So Meltdown or Terraforming wouldn't have done anything in either situations, which it didn't because I only had 2 Alistairs at the time. And then it's like, you can search for Diagram, but what are you going to pop? It's the only card in your hand. So I was like, dude, like the 3rd Alistair actually would have came up so many times. So I actually bumped him to 3 The reason why I played them at 2 in the past was just because I didn't want to brick on the card. But ultimately, especially when it comes down to me playing all the hand traps that I want to play, I need a card like this in my hand, whether I open it going first or second, to just make sure that I can establish myself very well and have a guaranteed some kind of play, whether it's a Mechabuck, a Kaitis, a Raijin. I just need an extra form of disruption in addition to the strikes and the hand traps that I play. And then I also play the one blue boy. You have to play a ulti or you're not going to draw it. The same with the Alistairs. You have to play foreign Alistairs or you'll never draw them. And these are the actual normal summons in the deck. I play 4. Masterpiece, I don't really count him as a normal summon because you hardly ever drop him on your turn. He's always a play that you make on your opponent's turn, and that's how you interrupt your opponent and get the maximum value out of that play. So normally on my turn, I just summon either the Alistair or the blue boy. So it's really simple. You just play 4 normal summons. And that sums up the actual monsters. Then for the hand traps, I played 3 copies of Ash. I know a lot of people don't like hand traps, and I understand you casual players are kind of tired of hand traps. But the reason why hand traps are so fair and not actually unfair is because decks like ABCs, Pendulum Magicians, Spirals, and Trickstars, and even the Magical Musketeers, the Invoked archetype, all those decks can be slowed down or shut down by hand traps. And hand traps even out the playing field because they're accessible to everyone who has the money to buy them. They're not like limited to one archetype. They're generic. So one could say that they hate hand traps, but also that same person that hates hand traps can actually play them themselves in their deck just to increase the ceiling of their deck. So I feel like in the format that we're in, you kind of have to play hand traps, not necessarily to win, but if you want to have a higher ceiling and have an easier game playing against all these crazy meta decks, you definitely should play hand traps. You'll find it to be a lot more difficult combating these decks when you're going second and you don't open with any way to disrupt their combo. Because if they get to play willy-nilly without any way of you shutting them down, then they can do whatever they want. And at that point, you're playing through this unbreakable board, and it's really difficult at times. Of course, with the masterpieces now, but if you don't play Dracos, it's going to be really hard. Then we played 3 Ghost Ogre. You got to play the ultis or you'll never draw them. Also played 3 copies of Joel and Lockbird. This card is so insane against the Pendulum matchup. People just really sleep on how strong he is. The Pendulum deck is just, the Pendulum Magicians, all they do is search. This not only stops them from searching the time Pendulum graph, that continuous trap can be very annoying to me. But in addition to that, if you draw them at the right time, they cannot double Omega you, which is really important. If they double Omega you, you lose a lot of advantage because you're going to be starting your turn off with 4 cards. If you use the hand trap, now you're starting with 3 cards, which is very, very difficult to play. And if they can get you another one of your cards out of your hand with that time Pendulum graph, you're down to 2 cards now. And that's like, there's no real way to come back off that unless you're playing, of course, the 1-card combo in the form of Alistair. But if you don't play Invoked, it's really difficult. So Joel and Lockbird is just so insane for that matchup. For ABCs, it's pretty strong. If they resolve Desires first, it's like they can't Union Hanger after that. And then for the Trickstar matchup, this just rapes them because everything they need actually has to be searched unless they hard draw the Reincarnation. And then, of course, you know, this hits Dracos really, really bad. Like, especially the Demise build is just retarded. So this hand trap is very unfair. And, of course, we all know that this just butt rates Spirals. Like, Quick Fix is like, hello, search. Joel Lockbird's like, let's go to game 2. It's just so strong. And, of course, we play the Maxi. You got to play the ulti or you never draw it. These are the hand traps that I decided to main deck. When you get into my side deck, you're going to see even more hand traps. So you play 10 hand traps and you play 8 actual monsters. I like that lineup. I play a lot of monsters in comparison to what I used to play in the past. And the reason being is because there's a lot of scenarios that came up in the past where I had a masterpiece in either a continuous spell or trap, and I just needed a monster, even if it's a hand trap. Like, I found myself sometimes setting my draw just to tribute it with Apocalypse or Heritage or, you know, Return or Disciples just to drop my masterpiece. So I felt like maximizing on as many good monsters as I possibly can works. And there was also, it came up yesterday when I was playing at DNA where I actually normaled my draw and then Spellbook of Knowledge him away, and I drew into these 2 cards, Diagram and Mariamne. And I was like, oh yeah, I got this. It was so dope. So it's just like weird scenarios where you'll learn to play your deck a bit better once you're in like a tight, I guess you could say a tight position, where you're kind of backed in the corner, and that's where your skill level comes out. And you really get to see what you're made of. Because if your deck's not autopilot, you really do have to think everything through and kind of manage your resources correctly so that you always have a follow-up play. That is something that I really do loved about the Invoked engine is no matter what, no matter how slow people say Invoked is and how it's like not really fast-paced, it's really consistent and it guarantees you to have a follow-up play every single turn. Of course, we play 3 Draconic Diagram. I call this card Double D's. This card is just the hot sauce, man. It's so daggone powerful. I was debating whether I played 3 of this or 3 Alistair, but ultimately I wanted to play another copy of the actual card because it came up yesterday where I used both Alistairs. And I could have won that game if I just had the Terraforming because I was just going to Purgatrio for game. I mean, if I had another target for my second Meltdown because I had Terraforming, but ultimately I had to scoop it up because I would have searched Meltdown with no target or Diagram with no other cards. So I was like, the third Alistair was mandatory. And just for that reason, I played 3 now. So I'm still going to keep this card at 2. And 10 with that, we play 3 copies of Optimus Prime. You got to play the ulti Terraforming so you'll never draw it. If you love your deck and you're a fan of Max Ready, I recommend you get the best quality cards for your deck. If you love it and it's what you're playing for the format, do it, man. Just bling it out. It's just a really good feeling and it just makes you happy every time you look at it. And then we play 2 copies of Secrets and also 2 copies of Knowledge in addition to that. The 2-to-1 ratio has worked out very, very well for me. In addition to having, you know, the 6 other targets in the form of Droll and Alistair, opening up with Secrets is like much more advantageous because it's the similar, it's almost in equivalence to opening up with Pot of Desires minus all of the banishing. It does eat up your normal summon, but you have to think that this deck only plays 4 normal summons in addition to everything I just said. So sometimes your normal summon doesn't even matter. Like if it's not Alistair, it doesn't matter. So if you don't open up with Alistair but you have Secrets, you're not wasting your normal summon on the blue boy. You're using the only normal summon you had for that turn. And then we also play 1 copy of True Draco Heritage. This is something some people might find to be very funny, but I play 1 of each of the Draco spells. I personally don't like them very much by themselves. They do nothing. As I explained, that's why I don't play the baby Dracos. I wanted my deck to be as consistent as possible, and I didn't want it to lose to itself, if that makes sense. I don't want to lose because my hand isn't cooperating properly. So I play 1 of each because their effects are really dope when you have the setup for them. In addition to that, making Masterpiece unaffected by spells tends to be a bit more relevant in the Spiral matchup, not because they play spells that out it, but because when you summon your Masterpiece tributing one of these, this spell pops the Spiral Resort first. Like for example, if you have Apocalypse, you activate Apocalypse, you tribute this and your Alistair to drop Masterpiece. This will target Spiral Resort as cost. Once Spiral Resort is destroyed, Masterpiece can freely pick your board apart because all of your Spiral monsters can now be targeted. Making a Masterpiece unaffected by traps doesn't do much in the Spiral matchup because they don't play traps that can hurt you. The only drawback or downside would be Masterpiece has no protection from your diagram. But if you're playing right, if you're playing smart and you're playing it right, Masterpiece won't even be touched. So that's the way I like to drop him in the Spiral matchup, but only for that matchup in particular. And then I play 1 copy of Invocation. This has worked out very, very well for me. There's not been a time except maybe in my hero matchup, which is actually yesterday, you know, Dark Law banished everything, where a second Invocation came up. And even though the second one came up, I had so many other ways to disrupt him. I literally just kept poking him with the blue boy that I didn't get able to search my target because he ashed it. So I just kept poking him for damage with blue boy and cutting his play short with hand traps and solemn strikes. It was insane. But the 1 Invocation has worked perfect for me. The reason why I opted to play 1 in the beginning was because it's so bricky when you draw it by itself. Even though you play like so many ways to get to Alistair, like I said, I just hate situational cards. And because this requires for you to have Alistair for it to ever be live, I choose to just play it at 1. There are times when you draw it, but it's always the right time because you play it at 1 and you always see your Alistair first. So it's really nice. But I don't know. I just feel like 1 is perfect for me. 2 might be the correct ratio for you, but this is just the success that I've had with my ratio. And I also main deck 1 Dark Hole and 1 Raigeki. I don't want my deck to lose to dice rolls. Like it's kind of like a dice roll format where whoever gets to go first kind of wins. And I didn't want my deck to lose because it didn't win the dice roll. And I also didn't want it to be able to win just because it won a dice roll. I wanted it to be vice versa. So my deck is very versatile whether it goes first or second because I main deck the problems for my I main deck the cards that are problems for my opponent to deal with going second. And my deck is perfect when it goes first because I'm playing, you know, basically Masterpiece Macabre. That's the board I'm trying to make. And that sums up the spells. And then we're going to go ahead and move forward to the trap lineup. We're playing the best hand trap in the game, which basically is, you know, it's not only a hand trap, but it's actually a board wipe. I actually main decked this card since the day that Circuit Break was legal. When I played this card at YCS Dallas, every single player was side decking it people didn't actually see its potential yet. A lot of people were saying it's trash, it's not that good. And that was also in addition to that cassette rotation was at 3. But I still chose to main deck this because, like I said, I don't want to lose just because I lost the dice roll. Like, if you have to go second playing on a Spiral player or a Pendulum Magician player or like ABCs and they tag out with their Buster, you just evenly match, like, you don't want to lose just because your opponent got to go first. And I feel like this card, in addition to the Dark Hole and the Raigeki and the 10 hand traps that I play, I feel like it makes it a lot more fair going second because I play 15 very, very powerful cards for when I end up losing the dice roll. And if I don't lose the dice roll, this is still a really, really problematic card for my opponent because at that point, it's really hard to dictate and determine when the evenly match is going to be dropped because you're no longer going to be dropping it from your hand. And because my deck controls so little cards, it's normally just like either Masterpiece and Diagram or just an Invoked Macabre by itself. I'm still able to banish a lot of cards with this trap. So that's why it's still powerful in a main deck. Decks like Spirals and Pendulum Magicians can't really do that because their boards always require for them to control so many cards. So evenly match is very lackluster and mediocre if they were to main deck it. So that's another thing I felt was really great about this deck is that its 2 core engines are so small that it gives you the room to main deck the best cards you possibly can play. And I also played 3 copies of Solemn Strike and 1 Solemn Warning. So all the other cards you saw, like the evenly matched, the board wipes, and the hand traps were for going second. I wanted to play really, really strong cards for going first. And I feel the Solemns are not only detrimental in the Spiral matchup, just striking Helix, or, you know, the Summon of Sleeper, but it's also powerful against Pendulum Magicians. It's also powerful against ABCs. It's really strong if you strike Candina. In addition to that, it shuts any hand traps down. If I need to successfully use all my Diagram, I can activate my Diagram's effect. If they Ash or Ogre it, I can just change striking because this is a spell speed 3. I'm getting my Diagram no matter what. So I really like these cards. And Warning is not only an out to Slumber and to Masterpiece. Outing Candina in the Trickstar matchup is very, very important. So you want to play as many ways as possible to shut her down. And I can name a list of cards that Warning hits, but if you know what Warning does, you know what Warning does. And then I play only 2 Apocalypse and 1 Return. As I stated about the spells, I really feel like these cards are bricks because they do nothing by themselves. So I wanted to play not the bare minimum, but just enough to get away with it to where I'm not drawing too many of them. So Masterpiece has 5 chances to get it right in my main deck. And then I also side deck 3 anti-spells, which gives me 3 additional continuous spells or traps for his effect. So yeah, that sums up the main deck. And then we're going to hop right into my extra deck. So this is a card I'm considering playing for my winter cherries, but I'm just not so sure because I haven't seen Burning Abyss enough myself personally. I know it's being played and I know like they topped ARG, but me personally in the area I'm in, I haven't seen Burning Abyss like whatsoever. But it's still a card I'm considering whether I take it if I go to another regionals very soon, maybe in December. But the extra deck is as follows: 1 Chlamydia and also 1 Syphilis. These are the best cards in my extra deck. On the occasion that I make them, I normally win that game, especially in the Spiral matchup. You can use Mariamne and Invoke Macabre 2 level 9s to make this. Your Diagram can search the second Mariamne. You're stunning your opponent for a turn. Then you just detach Call Wind, pop up 2 of their monsters to summon Mariamne, and banish 4 cards from their deck. If you happen to banish the 1 Drone, or the 1 Quick Fix, or the 1 Big Red, or even one of their rescue missions, it puts them so far behind. So it's just a really, really strong card. So it's kind of like an auto win against Spirals. It's definitely an auto win against Trickstars because they cannot get over it whatsoever. It's an auto win against Dinosaurs, and it also tends to slow down Pendulum Magicians to the point where they have to resort to getting that time Pendulum Graph right away. And you can also answer to that with Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. So I really love this card. That's why I'm always going to play him. These also happen to be Winter Cherries targets, which is really cool. And then we played 3 copies of Macabre. I chose to play 1 English just so I wouldn't have to like get a a translation, and then 2 Raijin the same, 1 English of him just so I wouldn't have to translate. Then the rest I played just 1 Purgatrio, 1 Cocytus, and 1 Caliga. The cards that come up the most are actually Raijin and Mechaba. That's why I play them at multiples. Mechaba is so insane in every single matchup. It's just so hard to deal with because no matter what, your opponent takes a neg. And that's, like I said in the beginning of this video, I just want to drain as many resources from my opponent as possible. So if I open, for example, with the Mechaba Masterpiece, and I have Ash and or Ogre with the Solemn Strike face down, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 forms of disruption in the form of Strike, any one of my hand traps, my Masterpiece, and also my Macabre. Masterpiece and Macabre tend to be a bit too much for any deck. the hand trap and the strike are just the icing on the cake. And because my deck's so consistent, I tend to open up that way a lot when I'm going first. And if I'm going second, it's just hand trap city, board wipes, let's get it. So that's kind of how I'm playing it. Purgatrio, I used to play him at 2 because he comes up a lot. Ashes are in rotation. OTKing is very, very possible with this card, just this card alone. But I had to make space for Cherry's targets and also synchros, which you're going to see in the side deck why I can synchro summon now. And then Kakaitis is an auto win in the Spiral matchup and the Paleozoic matchup. And then Pendulum Magicians also tend to have a very hard time dealing with this card because their outs of removal tend to target. The only one that they have that can get over this is actually Ignister. And if you have an answer to the Ignister, this is just going to stay on the field until it gets Kaiju'd. And Kaliga not only stalls for turns and just turn spirals, it completely turns them off. Like if you have this and an Ash, they're done for the turn. But in addition to that, you could just normal your Alistair and proceed to make Bagusta and continue just building your card advantage and stalling for time. In addition to that, when you have Baguska on the field, you can drop your Masterpiece whenever you want, and he's unaffected by this. So you just have Baguska Masterpiece. You're stalling and poking for 3250 every turn after you pop a card. It's really, really powerful. I won so many games just off of Masterpiece and Baguska alone. And then the rest of my extra deck is actually just Winter Cherry's targets. And then these 2 synchros actually go into myself. But for the Cherry's targets, I played the 2 best ones. Well, the 3 really, these are my 3 favorite Winter Cherry's targets because I feel like these cards are so unfair. If I'm going against those decks and they open up with any of these boss monsters, it's very difficult for me. It's not impossible, but it just makes things a lot more difficult because then I have to waste my resources to play around these cards. And I'd much rather just deal with it head on. Yes, pot of acquisitiveness does exist, but most players either don't tech it in, and if they do tech it, it's still they're playing like in such a disadvantageous position because now they're trying to like set themselves up to do something when I'm already ahead of them. So nonetheless, I still play these as Cherry targets. And then this is actually a Cherry's target for the Pendulum matchup. But in addition to that, I make him from my extra deck. So he serves dual utility similar to these cards. I make them and they're Cherry targets. And I actually teched in Scarlight today because it came up yesterday where I gammaed my opponent's Abyss Dweller after I tried to resolve Diagram because he knew my trap was going to pop his Firewall Dragon. So I diagrammed to pop the trap. He chains Abyss Dweller. I chained Gamma from hand. And because I only had Omega in my extra deck, I wasn't able to push for enough damage. And I thought to myself, if I had Scarlight, I could have just made Scarlight and cleared his board and attacked him for game because he was at 2,050 life points. Unfortunately, I was only able to attack for 700. I still got game, but at the offset chance that he could have came back on me next turn, this would have been the correct play to make. So I chose to main deck this just for my Cypher and Gear Gamma. It's also a very powerful card when you're going second, playing through your opponent's board. So we're going to hop right into the side deck. We play a 3 Raw Spear mode. This is obligatory for me. I've always played this no matter what format we're in, especially in DDD format when they were like kind of a thing. I just like this. It's much more versatile than a Kaiju, and it returns to you, and it cannot be targeted whatsoever for attacks or effects. So Spirals can't play around this. Magicians really can't play around this unless they have Ignister. Borreload can't target it for an attack, so you can't take control of it. It's just so hard to deal with, and it drains a lot of your resources just on summon. Like I said, I want to take as many cards and resources from my opponent as possible. And then, of course, we play the Kaiju package. I'm sorry, I don't play this Kaiju package. Let me take these out. I actually took these out. I don't know why they were still there, but I just play a small Kaiju package in the form of Gamma Seal and Kumongous. I took these out yesterday. They were still there, but I took those out actually to make room for the next package. And then I play 3 anti-spells for Spiral players, Pendulum Magicians, for ABCs, for Trick Stars, for almost every deck. I think the only deck it doesn't hurt is BA because it even shuts down Invoked and Infernoids, and it definitely shuts down Magical Musketeers because now they can't play their spells from hand. They can play their traps from hand, but they can't play their spells from hand, so they have to set them. So it's like the most versatile side deck card I have. If I don't know what I'm playing against and I'm forced to go first, or if I am going first and I don't know what I'm playing against, this is the only safe choice I can make for side decking, aside from my hand traps, of course. And then for the actual hand traps that I'm side decking, which some of these are questionable whether or not you main deck them. I side deck 3 Gammas now and 1 Driver. This is what got me game yesterday. So this is why I'm playing him, and I'm also playing Omega. This goes in tandem with what I said about draining my opponent's resources. If I'm in a position where my opponent's trying to Ash me, and I can negate that Ash or that Drone Lockbird or that Maxi with Gamma, or even negate my opponent's Gamma with my own Gamma, I not only take a card from their hand, but I proceed to make Omega and then clear another card from their hand. And now they're starting at less resources than they had originally. And at that point, all I need is just another hand trap, a strike, or a masterpiece to finish the job for me. So I just like the Ciphering Gear package a lot, because it does its job so well, but then it also fits the playstyle that I wanted to go for with this deck, which was just picking cards out of my opponent's hand as much as possible, baiting out plays, baiting out ashes, baiting out ogres. And my deck doesn't really lose to the Maxi. It doesn't really lose to Ogre, and it doesn't lose to Winter Cherry. So the only two good hand traps against this deck would actually be Ash and then Droll. Gamma's questionable because it really hits my hand traps, and it could possibly hit my my Alistair, but it can never hit my Masterpiece, and it doesn't hit any of my spells, which is really nice. So I like this because it not only stops the hand traps themselves, but it clears, like I said, it clears a card from your opponent's hand, then proceeds to clear 2. So it's almost like a negate and then discard 2 cards from your opponent's hand. In my mind, that's how I look at it. So if my opponent used that hand trap on me, now he's starting at 4 cards in hand. Depending on what he played, he could be at 3. And then my card, my deck is built to interrupt my opponent. So Omega's gonna return, and then you'll have a Masterpiece and a Makaba. In addition to that, you'll have 3 very, very difficult boss monsters for your opponent to play around. So I really, really like this package. And then the next package is just the Winter Cherries. The Winter Cherries is here mainly for the Spiral matchup, you know, the ABC and then the Paleozoic. Paleozoic is still a deck that I think has potential, and that's why I just want to be ready for him. But it may be possible that I'll just probably take out Toliassum for Dante if BA does better. That sums up the extra deck, the side deck, and actually sums up the deck profile, you guys. Give your honest opinion and feedback on what you think of the deck. If you have any questions, I definitely have answers for you. I don't like my people to really feel confused. And yeah, I actually took these cards out, these two, to fit in the Gamma package. But yeah, if you guys like the deck profile, definitely let me know if you feel like there's some stuff that I can work on. You know, if there's some card choices that I made that were horrible or poor. I definitely would love to hear your feedback on that. But God bless you guys nonetheless. Stay tuned for Infernoids, and also stay tuned for Cubics. We're going to be doing that right afterwards. All right, y'all. I'm out.